Hello everyone, it is Reese here, and in today's video we're talking about the art of title writing. So how do you write a good title? How do you make it eye-catching? How do you make it to the point? How do you get people to want to read whatever it is you've written? So to begin, the importance of getting your title right. I mean, if you've put out any piece of work, if you've written an essay, if you've written a piece of academic work, a conference presentation, whatever it is, you want people to engage with it. And how do people know whether whatever you've done is something that is worth engaging with? Well, having a good, interesting, eye-catching title is often a really key, integral piece of the puzzle. And so the real sort of fundamental thing to this is sort of figuring out what your title should be. Assuming it's not a context where you're sort of given a title you have to respond to, in as you may be in sort of undergraduate work, is to understand the piece, to understand the argument, to understand sort of fundamentally what it is, what's the main thrust of whatever it is that you've done, that you're presenting. Knowing that, first of all, is really, really integral, because it is very difficult to come up with an argument. It's very difficult to come up with a title, if the argument is somewhat sort of sketchy or confusing or whatever in your mind. So have that as the first point of call. If you were trying to sum up the argument, the main ideas, whatever, in a couple of lines, a couple of sentences, what would you say? So my first piece of advice is being direct. That is, having something that is not overly long. You don't want a title that's like 30 words long or something like that. But something that is sort of to the point, it's punchy, and it's descriptive. It accurately sums up what your article or conference paper or piece is. And along with that, it's being quite precise and unique about it. It's easy to analyse, I don't know, let's say analyse Macbeth. Say it's easy to analyse Macbeth and have a piece titled An Analysis of Macbeth. Which is technically correct. That does the job. That is true. But it is boring. It is not very descriptive. It's not clear what you're doing. So sort of if you were doing to sort of being more specific with it, a gendered analysis of the witches in Macbeth. Still not brilliant, but that is a much more punchy and sort of clear idea of what it is you're looking at. And the way to figure out often your way into it, to figure out what the title should say, is to think, what is the main finding? What is the main idea? What is the main thing that you have done? Where do you find this? You look at the conclusion, you look at the main arguments, and you sort of try and pull out the main things you've done, because that is often where sort of the key thing that you want to convey in a title is. The other thing to go along with being direct is to be eye-catching. So your title could be the most sort of accurate, perfect summary of a work in the world. But if it's not interesting, if it doesn't engage, people are not going to read it. And that's what you want at the end of the day. You want people to engage with the thing you've done. So how do you do that? There are some ways, some tips I can offer. So A, avoid technical language. It should be something that essentially can be read by anyone. You don't need people to be very well versed in your field, although obviously you want people well versed in your field to read something. But it should be the case that I, as a lay person for most fields, would be able to pick up and say, I understand what this is, even if I don't know the full details of it. So avoiding technical language where it's not necessary. Similarly, you want that to be easily searchable, so people are going to be Googling, they're going to be looking in databases for specific things. So what keywords, what ideas will be findable? A good thing you can do here is speak to people who are already in the field. You can speak to especially sort of subject librarians. They are experts at figuring out sort of the SEO and the search terms and that will really sort of lead the way. Or indeed like journal editors, if that's where your piece is going. You want people to be able to find what you've written as well. It's no point writing the best thing ever on silent cinema if your title is something that no one will ever look for. And then another tip that I think you can use is something I use myself sometimes. It doesn't have to be necessary, but you can spark curiosity by sort of introducing sort of perhaps questions or sort of presenting things sort of that are almost inviting an answer. Questions are the obvious way of doing this. Let's invent something now. So say we're doing something on I don't know, a particular medicine, say. Who does this medicine benefit? Blah blah, whatever. it sort of almost it sets up the thing that you're going to answer in the piece. And that can be a way of catching an eye as well, to sort of pose a question that the person looking at your thing will not immediately know the answer to. The way, of course, to know the answer is to read what you have done. A good way into titles that I quite like, this is not something that has to be done by any means, but something I really like is having sort of two-part titles. So something, a colon or a dash, something else. Often the way you're doing this is you want one part, the first part, to kind of grab attention. It's something that is eye-catching, it's bold, it's striking, it's an idea. And then the second part is somewhat more descriptive. It sets up sort of an argument or the key approach. Now I do a lot of, say, film papers in my line of work, so I often begin with sort of a relevant quote or a relevant idea or something like that, and then sort of present the argument more in the second bit. That's a structure I quite like. If you look at a lot of the stuff I've done, that is kind of where I land really in most of the papers and articles and stuff that I've written. So I quite like this as an idea again, sort of have something that is bold and then have something that's descriptive and put them together. And that can be a really sort of effective way to make titles work. Lastly, I think it's important to talk about some sort of important pitfalls that can be easily avoided, which are worth thinking about. The first of which I would say is be very, very careful about overselling what it is that you've done. So no one wants to read a piece on the appeal of the title and then find that the piece doesn't deliver, to be disappointed. So if I give an example, let's stick with the medicine thing and say, your piece, a cure for the common cold or whatever. And then they read the piece and you've not done that. It's very frustrating and it's rare. I mean, it must be said, it's very rare. It's more in the case of I've read essays from sort of undergraduate students and master students which have promised a lot in the title and then not delivered it, and sort of you have to reflect when you're marking it on the fact that what they've said they're going to do is not something they've done. And also be wary of sort of being very dismissive towards existing scholarship or stuff in the field. Often fields are quite small and it's quite an unprofessional thing to do anyway. But again, sort of it can put a bad taste in the mouths of people that you're going to want to read your thing. People don't want to cite things that are rude. And then think about where pieces are going. And I say this in the sense of thinking about things like humour and jokes and whatnot. So the way that you would title an undergraduate essay is different to how you title a PhD thesis, to a conference paper, to a journal. Humour can work, sort of a bit of lame wordplay never goes amiss in academic circles if it's relevant and appropriate. I saw a wonderful example based on sort of wind turbines and sort of that sort of energy. The piece, the first part of the title was "Gone with the Wind." Again, it's referential and makes sense in the context. But think about where your work is going and sort of pitch it to that audience. And having that in your mind as well can be incredibly effective and useful. So here we go, some thoughts, some reflections on putting a title together. It's a hard thing to sort of discuss in the sense of essentially not having examples, not having something to unpick. But I would say have a look at works that have titles that have caught your eye, and again think about what they have done. This is always the best way. So look at what people that appeal to you have done, and sort of try and learn those lessons. I very much think that's what I'd suggest. Of course, if this is something that I could do in sort of with actual work, if this is a follow-up video you'd like me to make, do let me know down below. And any other videos you'd like me to make as well, do comment down below. I want to make the sort of stuff that you guys want to see, so please tell me what you want to see. Otherwise, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, ring the bell so you know when there's a new video. Thank you so much for watching this, and I will look forward to seeing you all in the next one.